Welcome to Pay Attention, a podcast guiding you from the chaos of the mind to the clarity of the heart. Here's your host, Holly McNeill.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Well, the holidays are upon us here on Thanksgiving Eve. So I invite everyone, let's just take a breath. I talked last time about taking a pause, and I know with the holidays, a lot of people are getting ready to have family and guests, and this year, the holiday, Thanksgiving Eve, Christmas Eve, and New Year's Eve all end up on Wednesdays, which is when I have my podcast. So a little bit of opportunity to talk to people about the holidays. And I know a lot of people are, getting ready to see family and getting their turkey ready, and eventually we'll go on to Christmas. But I also know there's some of you out there that maybe, are not. I wanted to talk to the people today. I wanted to give a little bit of my backstory and talk to the people today who might be separated from their loved ones, estranged, alienated. It's especially hard during the holidays. So I wanted to take this opportunity to tell you that you are not alone. I have definitely experienced alienation in my life. I spent my birthday is actually New Year's Day, and I spent during the time I'm going to talk to you about in the recording here. I spent one New Year's Day completely on my own, alienated from my children. And my father was alive back then, and he was even out of town. And I just went to his house to feel his energy. So if you're out there and you're missing family this holiday season, then this podcast episode is for you to tell you that you're not alone. So after our broadcast last Wednesday, I stayed in the studio and did a little recording, telling you a little about my story and my experience with alienation, and in hopes that you'll find hope, know that you're not alone, and so grab a tissue. You might not need a tissue, but I'll definitely need a tissue while I'm watching this. But for those of you out there, anyone out there who's a little bit kind of lonely and separated during the holidays, please enjoy. Hello, and welcome to a special Thanksgiving episode of Pay Attention. If you're listening to this live, it's the day before Thanksgiving 2025. And if you listened to my last episode, I talked about with Dr. Jada Phillips how it's okay to sit back and take a pause, especially around the holidays. So that's what we're going to do today. Just take a pause from the interviewing, take a pause from the pushing. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit of a story. And anyway, thanks for being here. Our human journey is, in some ways, it's wonderful and it's lovely. And we're really quite blessed to be here. If you have ever heard the Buddhist teaching about how rare this precious human life is, they say it's as rare as if a blind turtle who comes up from the bottom of the ocean every 100 years comes up, and when he reaches the surface, he puts his head through a golden ring sitting on the ocean. So very rare to be here. So grateful to have this experience, this human journey. But it's also can be full of struggle and suffering. Being human ultimately means there is going to be suffering. There isn't a single human on earth that hasn't suffered. And so especially around the holidays, I wanted just to talk and sit back and take a breath. And today I wanted to talk in particular to and about those people out there during the holidays who have been alienated, might be feeling alienated from their parents, from their children, and the struggles that can cause. Because I know the story of alienation well, and I don't have a script, and this isn't going to be perfect, so I have a couple of notes today. Over 22 million adults in the US say they have been targets of parental alienation. 13 to 15% of parents report experiencing alienating behaviors from the other parents, right, during divorce. And 3.9 million US children are estimated to be moderately or severely alienated from their parents. So for all of you out there who might be in that category, I certainly was. My heart goes out to you. I know how tough it can be. So just to tell you a little story about that, long ago and far away, when I was young and open and living my life, I walked into the laundry room and I saw my mother crying there. And I asked her, "Hey, Mom, what's wrong?" And she said, "Your father has asked for divorce. He doesn't love us anymore." And in that second, my world shattered. Even in those beginning moments, right when I found out about it, it was, he doesn't love us anymore. And she worked hard to keep that belief alive. And all of a sudden I'm unlovable and I'm unworthy. And yeah, my father was basically alienated from me as a child, because my mother was hurting. It's all she was doing her best. I understand that, but she was hurting. But she really did use us as shields against that pain, and it's a lot of the reason why I'm here today. A lot of the reason why I did so much research and understanding on how the mind works, how we get into these beliefs and habits and patterns. But at 7, you just take it all in as yourself. Your own problem. You were wrong. You were flawed. So I lived that way growing up. Didn't see my father too much, and well, life has a way of repeating those lessons. If you don't learn them, I guess the first time, there are a lot of repeating lessons in this world. But when I got divorced years later, of course, I could see those same patterns of alienation that my father experienced with my mother, heading my way. Yeah, my ex-husband was working hard to alienate me from my children. He said, "I don't need anything from you. I'll take care of them. I'll support them. All you need to do is pay for their college," or something like that. And I knew from experience as an alienated child how much damage that can do uh, to a young child's self-esteem. My kids were, I think, 5 and 7 at the time. So I knew, as insecure as I was, as much low self-worth as I had, as anxious as I was back then, and I've talked about some of that in my podcast. I don't know. I just knew I couldn't walk away. And my father didn't totally walk away either. I did see him at holidays and so forth, but it was very, very difficult. But I knew that I couldn't walk away, because what happens is that a very small portion of people that are alienated from their children actually recover. And as this is the holidays, and we're talking about gratitude and Thanksgiving, I am going to get a little emotional here as I tell you all my story. So I stuck with it. I court case after court case, police episode after police episode. I stayed with my kids. I stayed in the battle for as long as I possibly could. The battle lasted about 8 years. Started with huge child custody fights. We had the court ordered a child custody evaluation. They checked each parent's home. We did intelligence tests, ink blot tests. The kids had to come in for interviews. And at the end, the evaluator said, "Well, you're both good parents, but one of you got an A and one of you got a C." And I was not willing to be the one that got the C. So I went back to the evaluator and I said, let's try again for 50-50. Let's try again to work this out. So I sat down with my estranged husband and the evaluator, and we worked through everything, and we talked about holidays, and he goes, wow, I remember this like it was yesterday. He says, wow, I think we're getting there. I think this is going to happen. And so I turned to my estranged husband and I said, are we? Is this going to happen? Are we talking about 50-50? And he looked at me and he said, someday I might give you 50-50. So sure that he was the one that got the A. And with that, the meeting ended, and the evaluator had nothing left to do but pull the trigger. One of us would get custody. And I was the one that got the A. I mean, come on, I was the one that was willing to go 50-50. So, but you would think this would be the end, but it was only the beginning. My ex-husband was so angry that he worked diligently for the next 8 years of hell to alienate me from my children. Anything he could do, any opportunity he could to call the police because, the custody wasn't just right, or get in my children's ear about how terrible I was. It was so hard, but I must say that those 8 years taught me so much. Like I said, I was very insecure, very anxious because of my own alienation. I was destroyed, but I was fighting. I was fighting for those children. And when they would leave for a weekend or something, I would be strong in front of them. I'd be strong in front of the kids. I'd be strong when the police came to our door. There's one day when the kids, they were latchkey kids. They walked home the 2 or 3 blocks from school and went in the house. And one day my ex-husband got wind of this, called the police, said that I had abandoned them. And somehow I knew. So I drove home, and as I drove in the driveway, I could see the police knocking at my door. My children were terrified, But I explained to him the situation, and he left. He was satisfied. So I was strong in front of the kids when they needed me to be strong in front of the police. And but when they left, I would fall to pieces on the floor. So many times. I would fall to pieces on the floor, but each time I picked myself up, I would see things a little bit differently. Today, I talk about awareness, and to be able to see things not through the ideas, your identity, the patterns and thoughts of who you think you are, that insecure, worthless piece of shit that I lived with so long. But each time I pulled myself together, I could see things differently. So basically, for those 8 years, I stayed in it. I stayed in the battle. And my biggest regret in my life is that the children were in the middle during all of this. So kids, if you ever listen to this, I'm so sorry. And I also, I was really wanting to do what was best for the kids. And I had heard that it's better for the kids when they're older to go live with their father. I have 2 boys, if I haven't said that already. My older son had already gone to live with his father about when he was 13. And there was a lot of pressure from my ex-husband and my older son for my younger son to go. So he came to me one March in 2011 and said, Mom, I'm going on vacation with my dad and I'm not coming back. And I said, that's not how it works. And I tried to call my ex-husband, no answer. I tried to email him, no answer. And I got a phone call from my son's principal. He said, hey, he's saying goodbye to all his teachers, his friends. He's saying goodbye to all his friends. He's telling his teachers he's not coming back. And he didn't come back after that vacation. And so I had a decision to make. Do I drag my kids back to court for the custody I already had, for the custody I fought for so many years? But I couldn't do that to them. I couldn't put them in court. They're old enough now to say who they want to live with. I couldn't do that to them. So something inside me, right? I had cleared enough space out to tell me that I had done enough. And I took off my armor, I laid down my sword, and I left that battlefield forever. Now, as I said, a lot of alienated parents don't recover. I was alienated completely from my kids for about 4 months. No, they wouldn't answer my phone calls. They wouldn't respond. And I decided to put my house up for rent, the house I'd bought for them, and go live with a friend so we could support each other. She had some health issues, and I was obviously going through a lot. So I put my house up for rent, and we had this garage sale. I sold a bunch of stuff, but there were still some things. I mean, these guys, my kids basically just left, like walked out the door with none of their stuff. So I called them up and I got the answer machine. I said, hey, you don't need to answer me or anything, but I'm bringing some stuff down to you. They lived about an hour south of me in Minnesota. And I'm just going to leave it there for you because I want you to have it. And I packed up all this stuff, stuffing it in the car. And my friend, Amy, went with me down to take my stuff. And I started unloading it in front of their house. As I unloaded it, it seemed like a much bigger pile than it was going in. Oh boy. But as I finished unloading it, the door opened. And my older son came out. Boy, I was doing better that day than I am today. Anyway, I said, hey, son, I wanted you to have this stuff. He said, Mom, I love you. And I said, I love you too. Gave him a hug, and I got in the car and I drove away. Oh my gosh, so sorry. And from then on, I got to see them more often. From then on, I'd see them, talk to them on the phone once in a while at holidays. But I was living life as a childless mother, as they call it in Buddhism, as an alienated parent. But I wanted to do so much more. I was in Minneapolis. I wanted to do more with my job, with my career, with my spiritual search. And how long does a mother stay as a childless mother wanting to be with their kids, but not seeing them? So 18 months later, I decided that if I couldn't be in their lives, helping them with their day-to-day decisions, that I could live by example. And so I decided to move to the greater New York City area. And I told my younger son about it. In a couple of days, we had found to escape back to my hometown in the Black Hills of South Dakota. And driving up West Boulevard, I told him, and he said, Mom, I understand. Gosh, my younger son. And when I told my older son about it, at first it didn't seem to make much difference. But when I went to say goodbye, I went to see at my younger son's baseball game. I went to say goodbye. And I'm hugging my younger son. And then I hear my car revving in the background. And I go there, and there's my older son. And he's like, Mom, he's sitting in the car with it running. And he's revving the car. And he says, Mom, parents don't leave their children. And I tried to explain all that I had done to try to stay in their lives, all that I thought about, all that I wanted to be with them. And he just kept revving that engine. He couldn't hear me. And then as the engine quieted, he said, Mom, parents don't leave their children. And that was the hardest thing I ever had to do. It was the hardest thing I ever had to do, but I did live by example. I grew my career. I grew my spiritual journey. My older son very quickly went down to college in Florida, and I flew home every month for 2 or 3 days to see my younger son. And I actually got to see him more when I was living in Connecticut. I'd fly home. And one weekend, when when he was about 16. We were talking about it, and he started to cry. And he said, "Mom, that day you came down and dropped off all of our stuff. I was looking through the window. I wanted to come out too, but I couldn't do it." And he felt so guilty about it because these kids that are alienated, they don't want to be alienated from you. They don't want to be alienated from their parents. They want to be loved and feel safe. And I just hugged him and I told him it wasn't his fault. And I lived by example and I stuck with it and I kept in contact with them. And over the years, we mended our relationship, especially after they moved out on their own. And today I'm so grateful for my relationship with my sons, Nate and Zach. My younger son is living out here close by in California. I get to see him often. And my older son calls me once in a while when he's on his way home from work. So I'm going to stop tearing up now and just tell you how much gratitude I have. Because again, I know if you're out there and you're alienated, I know how much you're suffering and I know how much it hurts. And my heart goes out to you because I know that it's hard to recover. But if you have that hope and that intention, stay open to it. And maybe someday you can heal that relationship too. And I was going to talk more about gratitude as it's Thanksgiving, being thankful, because I am so very, very thankful for my relationship with my children, for my journey, for everything I learned through these tough times. Because during that tough times, I did find my way back to myself, to be kind to myself, to give compassion to myself, to be open to finding my way. So life is not easy, but if you're open to the journey, if you're open to that self-discovery, back to finding who you are, sometimes these really, really tough roads will show you the way. I was going to talk more about gratitude and all it does to make your amygdala smaller and make your hippocampus larger, and to soothe your parasympathetic nervous system. But you know what? Instead, I'm just going to open my heart to everyone out there. Thank you for listening, coming in and tuning in to these episodes, because this journey to unraveling all of those feelings, that all of that trauma really helped me along my way to unravel those feelings, those beliefs of low self-worth, to let go of those alarm systems of anxiety. And I'm still on my journey. And as I said last week, I'm stepping back and taking a pause. But I've come a long way, baby. And this journey is open to you and available to you. So if you're hurting, if you're alienated, if you're alone during these holidays, take a deep breath, a pause, give yourself a hug, right? Find gratitude for whatever it is you can find gratitude for today, and be open to better, to finding your way, to finding that love, that light, and that peace. So again, thank you for listening to my story. I hope in sharing it with you that it shows you that all lives can be struggles, but all lives can be full of joy as well. It's an ebb and flow on this journey. So thank you for joining me today, right before we all eat lots of turkey, or some of us, most of us, I don't know, maybe you're vegetarian. I hope you have a lovely, lovely holiday, and I will see you next time on Pay Attention. I'm Holly McNeill, the mindfulness architect. Thank you. Hello, and welcome to a special Thanksgiving episode of Pay Attention. If you're listening, sorry about that. Thank you all for staying and coming on to listen to my story today. And thank you for the comment that, people, I'm talking about this alienation and separation during the holidays, but this is something that's happening, worldwide. Some people say it's an epidemic, especially with social media, people getting cut off, and it's really tough. So if that's you out there, just know that you're not alone. Year round, there's a lot of people feeling the way you are. And if it is you out there, please, especially during the holidays, don't forget the self-care, right? Living by example, taking care of yourself, giving yourself that compassion and understanding, and keeping that hope for those mended relationships, for the relationship with yourself, and finding that joy and peace on your journey. I do have a year-round mindful living awareness hub community, online community, if you're interested in being a part of that. Or, go out. I'm sure there's other support groups. It's easy to be sad, of course, and depressed, but I hope through listening to this that you might start to open your heart, put that intention out there for what mended relationships you want, for what better you want, and be open to what shows up. Because in this beautiful human journey, if you put that intention out there, your mind is very powerful and you will find your way. So with that, I hope everyone has a lovely Thanksgiving. Don't eat too much. Please reach out. Can message me or find my email on my website. Please reach out if you're alone this holiday. I'd love to hear from you. All right. Thank you. And see you next time. Namaste.
Thanks for watching Pay Attention with Holly McNeill. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next week on Wednesday at 10 o'clock Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern.